Hello, hello. Welcome to MNN, Manhattan Neighborhood Network's Truth to Power with Inez. I am Inez E. Dickens, and we're here to discuss ranked choice voting Part 2. And we have as our guests returning two phenomenally strong women who have been involved with educating our communities on ranked choice voting since 2021. We have Faraine Griffith, a civic engagement enthusiast that has worked with, and she chairs the NAACP New York branch of civic engagement. And she formerly served as the community organizer for civic and community empowerment at the Office of the Public Advocate, Jumaane Williams. And she's currently serving as a campaign organizer, although we will not mention any candidates today. We also have with us the fabulous Nikki Yearwood. Nikki, as long as I've known her, has been passionate about voter and civic participation, because in her belief that civic participation does in fact empower a community. Actually, that is true for both Nikki and Faraine. They're both very passionate advocates, and that's why I asked them to be a returning guests in order to discuss and educate the public on how to actually use to the benefit of ranked choice voting. Nikki is a political consultant who has coordinated political campaigns, and she has served as a consultant both in politics and education, as well as trains public speaking for those seeking public office, as well as in the private sector. So this is part 2 of the discussion and the education of ranked choice voting. I'm going to start with you, Faraine, to please tell us the importance of ranked choice. 1, when did it start in New York City? 2, and 3, exactly how do we use that? It sounds so confusing to the public. It's confusing to me, and I'm a prime voter, super prime.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Assembly Member Inez Dickens, and thank you for Manhattan Neighborhood Network. So first, how did we get here? Well, New York City first started implementing ranked choice voting in 2021. So a few years back, there was a referendum that was on the back of the ballot. This is why it's important to always flip your ballot, because it was a ballot measure on the back of the ballot. The voters voted on this. So I want to be clear that the voters voted on it. Voters who came out to vote voted on this.
But many people didn't realize they should have flipped the ballot.
A lot of people don't realize that you should always flip the ballot, because there's ballot proposals, whether they're city or state ballot proposals on there. And then after that, it was passed 2018, 2019. It was implemented in 2021. So the first year that we had it actually was the year that the entire New York City government was turning over. The mayor was termed out, had to be replaced. The comptroller, New York City comptroller, was term limited, had to be replaced. The borough, all 5 borough presidents were term limited, had to be replaced. Most of the city council members. And these are all municipal races, and they all use ranked choice voting. So 2021 was actually the first year that we used ranked choice voting. And again, I want to be clear to the audience who we vote by, who do we use ranked choice voting to vote? So it will be the mayor, the public advocate, the comptroller, the borough president, and the city council members. Those 5 seats or elected positions are the only races that we would use ranked choice voting. And with last year, the only elected that did not, that wasn't term limited was the New York City public advocate, Jumaane Williams.
But then, wait a minute, let me ask you something for my moment here. Now, I'm listening to you talk to me about the positions that we use the ranked choice voting system on. But I didn't hear you say anything about the district attorney, and nor assembly or senate or Congress. Why?
Well, I didn't mention those because you don't use ranked choice voting in those races. So you don't use ranked choice voting for any federal. So the federal races are your president, your U.S. senators, your members, your House of Representative members, excuse me, which is our Congress members. You don't use it for that. You don't use ranked choice voting for the state legislators. So it would be for your governor. You wouldn't use it. You wouldn't use it for your state senate, your state assembly. You wouldn't use it for your judicial races. You wouldn't use it for your political races, your state committee, your judicial delegates, your district leaders, your county committee. You wouldn't use it on those races. And what sometimes the voters can get a little confused in the case of 2021. So here in New York County, we had a district attorney's race. So on our ballot, we had 5 races that were using ranked choice voting, and then we had the district attorney's race that wasn't ranked choice voting.
Now, why is that? Because each borough has a district attorney. So why is it that you're not using? Can you tell me why?
Sure. So first off, the ballot referendum was a function of the New York City Charter Revision Commission. So the change, once it was voted on, was only for New York City municipal races. So all of those other races that Farrain just named, where you don't use ranked choice voting, are under state or federal government. So for instance, district leaders, judges, district attorney, that's actually under the state constitution. As is, our members of the House, our U.S. Senate, our president, those are federal level races.
Okay.
So it was only a change to the New York City Charter, and it's only being used in New York City.
Okay. All right. So that means that only city positions
Yes.
use ranked choice voting. Am I correct?
Yes.
And even though, for instance, the district attorney runs in a borough, that position, although it's in a borough, and the race, the campaign occurs during a city election or re-election, that is not considered under the city charter. Am I understanding that?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Well, then that's very interesting.
And a lot of people don't know that. They see the district attorney
Yes.
in the 5 boroughs, and people don't realize that the 5 boroughs are counties, which fall under the state.
All right, because that's very confusing to voters, because when they look at a ballot, and I hope that you brought a ballot, but you look at the ballot and you see everything on there, and then you tell me, well, here's one position that you vote ranked choice, and here's another that you don't.
Right.
And are there any instances where it's a position such as city council or such as borough president or comptroller where you do not use ranked choice, or is it always going to be ranked choice?
Oh, no, it's only ranked choice for the primary. It's not in a general and special elections. Thank you, Nicole. You're right. So it's only during the special elections for those city positions we named and during the primary. So our upcoming primary, the New York State primary, it will take place in June. So it will be there, not in November. November is everyone can vote. You don't have to pick ranked choice voting. It's winner takes all.
And I'm gonna, in a minute, I want to discuss about how do you determine the ranking. Is it governed by a campaign, or is it governed by the voter themselves making the determination? And also, is there any instance where you don't rank?
I want to go back just one moment. For those who are not registered to a political party, they will not be able to vote in the primary because New York State is what we call a closed primary. So you have to be enrolled, the voter must be enrolled in one of the parties that is having a primary. So if someone is an independent voter, they will never vote ranked choice voting because they can't vote in the primary.
They only vote in the general election in November. So the
Right. And
primaries.
in special elections.
They can vote
They
in the
can,
special.
and everybody votes in special elections.
Okay, so
It's a-
special
it's a white
elections
ballot.
and the general election. But for the primaries, you have to be enrolled in a party that's having a primary. For instance, in this year, the Republicans have, well, for one position, and that's the controller. And if what happens in the case where there are only two candidates, right?
Yes. So, in order for an election to be ranked choice, you have to have 3 or more candidates. So, if you only have 2 candidates running, even if it's a city race, council, borough president, public advocate, comptroller, mayor, if it's only 2 people running, that race won't be ranked choice. And it really lends itself to the whole idea of ranked choice was to eliminate, some people call it instant runoff voting. So if there's only 2 candidates, there's not necessarily a need for a runoff election, right? So it makes sense that you need 3 or more candidates in order for a race to be ranked choice. But if at any time you aren't really sure, it's just a simple matter of actually reading the ballot.
Yes, and that is the same if they need a translator. You can always ask for a translator at the at your local polling site.
Now, tell me, tell me something about if you want to get a ballot mailed to you. How do you do that? How do you get a ballot mailed to you? And is it the same ballot as if you were going to a poll?
So it's the same, but they're different instructions. So if you want a mail-in ballot, you can also go to vote.nyc and you can click on request a ballot and they will send you a mail-in ballot. Now, I will flag that they did change the law. So if you request a mail-in ballot, you actually have to use that ballot to vote. You can no longer go to the poll site. Before, you could request an absentee ballot, have it sent to you, and then decide to go and vote in person if you wanted. If you request that mail-in ballot, you now have to vote by mail.
So if you don't use that mail-in ballot that you requested, you can no longer go to the poll. Because before you could request it, and if you didn't use it, you could go to the poll.
Right.
Now you cannot.
You cannot. You
So I
cannot.
think-
Yes. So if you want to request a mail-in ballot, you can also go to vote.nyc to request a mail-in ballot. And they have the instructions. And just going back also to the issue of print, you can also request an accessible ballot as well. So if you need a ballot with larger print to be sent to you, they can do that as well. We also have absentee voting. And so let's differentiate. The mail-in ballot, anybody can request a mail-in ballot. For an absentee ballot, you still need a reason. And prior to 2023, fall of 2023, the governor signed into law, which took effect January 1st, 2024, mail-in ballots in New York. So you can request a mail-in ballot at vote.nyc, and you can have the ballot mailed to you. Now, if you request an absentee ballot is different because in that instance, you have to indicate, there has to be a reason why you cannot vote in order to receive an absentee. So that means you will not be in the county where you're supposed to be voting for early voting or election day, and so you are requiring this ballot. So you can make the ask. Now, one of the things to flag now, which was different from before, is if you requested an absentee ballot, you can go and decide to vote in person. So sometimes I would request my absentee ballot so I could see it in advance. If I was doing any kind of voter education, I could show people. And so I had it to actually show people what to do. And with the absentee ballots and mail-in, there's multiple envelopes, etc. So you will walk through the process to ensure that people were voting properly, signing the envelopes as required, etc. It's a process. If you are requesting, make sure you are reading the instructions on any of the ballots. Now, if you request an absentee or a mail-in ballot, you cannot vote in person. You have to use those ballots, which means you have to complete them, put them in the envelopes as required, and mail them back. You can no longer vote at the poll site during early voting or on election day. You need to vote using those
now
those
tell me,
mail-in ballots.
if you use an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, you get an envelope.
Yes.
You get two envelopes,
You get two,
actually.
right.
You
Yep.
get
You get
the an envelope that you put the ballot in.
Yes.
And then you put that envelope in a. Now,
In
tell me
another
about that, because there's been losses because people did not sign where they were supposed to.
Right.
And that brings up another question about they're required. Am I correct that they do have to sign an envelope?
Yes.
The inside envelope, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, does that mean that they know how I want to vote? It's no longer a secret ballot?
Well, no, that's the reason why there's the double envelope, so that they don't necessarily know that, you know, who you're voting for. So it's supposed to be separated during the process of them being counted.
And sealed.
Yes.
The envelope with your ballot is sealed, and then you sign it and you put it in the mailing envelope. So you receive the master envelope. So it's 3 envelopes. The one that they sent you with everything in it, and then the one that you're putting your actual ballot in. After you mark it, you vote it, you put it in, and you sign that ballot and that envelope, the ballot for the envelope.
So then you're
and
telling
then you
me
put it in the mailing to mail it back and sign that as
the
well.
voter can be assured that at the Board of Elections, then they separate that envelope where you signed from the ballot.
And it gets separated per your assembly district, right?
Okay.
And then your election
All right.
district, right?
All
Because
right.
the election districts are under the assembly districts. I like to say that it's like a mall. The assembly district is the manager of all the little stores. So yes, they get separated. Everything comes into the Board of Election. It gets separated per assembly district, then down to your election
So
district.
then a voter is assured that
Yes.
it's still a secret ballot.
It's still a
as-
secret
Yes.
ballot.
As if they were voting at a polling site.
Right.
It's still a secret
That's right.
ballot.
Still a secret ballot.
Okay, but because that's a concern. Again, I want to thank both Nikki and Farine for joining us for this very, very, very important issue, ranked choice voting in New York City. I have a question about these ballots, and that is the dates. Can you apply at any time? Is there a date, the last date that you can apply for the mail-in ballots? Do you have to have them postmarked by a certain time? Can you go down to the Board of Elections and do it yourself? You know, tell us what we can do here.
Of course, there's some deadlines involved because the primary election is June 24th.
Okay.
And nowadays, we're in the time of early voting. I say June 24th is the last day to vote, right? So that's now the last day to vote. Now, the last day to apply for the absentee or mail-in ballots, again, this is to apply to receive them by mail, is June 14th, 2025. The last day to apply in person at the County Board of Elections is June 23rd. So each of the 5 boroughs has a Board of Elections office. You can go there in person and apply for the ballot there.
In Manhattan,
Yes.
where is that?
That is 200 Varick Street in Lower Manhattan. So I would say it's close to the Houston Street 1 train station, 200 Varick. You can go there and get you can do your absentee ballot, apply and fill it out, and then you can leave it there at the office.
Now, that's the Board of Elections.
Board
Is
of
that
Elections,
200 Varick Street?
200
Okay.
Varick
For New York
Street.
County, yes.
For
For New York County,
for
for Manhattan, for,
yes,
for the
for
borough
Manhattan.
of New York,
Yes.
Manhattan borough.
Yes, Manhattan.
Okay.
Yes. So then, of course, if you want to mail it back, if you want to get it online, request it online, get it by mail, it has to be postmarked by Election Day, which is June 24th. Now, that's if you want to mail it back. Now, if you want to deliver it, you received it by mail, you forgot to put it in the box, you have to get it to your County Board of Elections. So for Manhattan, 200 Varick Street by 9 p.m., which is the same time the polls close, right? You can also go to your poll site, and there's a box at the poll site for these ballots. You can drop it in the box. Again, you cannot vote using the machine. So you can take that mail-in ballot and you can drop it in the box at your
Now
poll
that's
site.
that's on election day, primary day.
That's on election
what
day
about
or
if-
before.
Well,
So
that's what I
even
want to know. During early voting, can you
during
do it
early
then?
voting, same boxes there. You can drop those ballots
And it's the
in
first
the box.
thing you see when you walk in the polling site is
Yep.
the box.
Okay, all right.
Before you even
can-
get to the information booth to give
But
them your
now,
address.
if I
or what
have
you.
if I have the absentee or the mail-in ballot,
Mm-hmm.
and I've signed it and put it in the 2 envelopes and got it all ready, I can take it to the early voting site,
Yes.
wherever that is. There's 2 in each of the districts.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying then I can take that and put it in that box
Yes.
instead of mailing it if I'm afraid about mailing it.
Yes.
And you can actually put it in any. Put it in the master envelope. You put your signature, and then what the Board of Election, the workers at the polling site, they now do their part. His address, says 437 Manhattan Avenue. That's the 70th Assembly District, Election District 30. So they would put that on the envelope. Now, when it gets to the Board of Election, they're doing their due diligence. They have to make sure first that the person is a U.S. citizen. That's number one, because that's number one on the voter registration form. And then they have to make sure that they are registered to vote. If they are not, or, as I mentioned before, if they are a independent voter and they went to vote in the primary, which independent voters cannot vote in the primary because only voters that are registered to the party's primary, right, that primary's party, get to vote. So now what happens is they get the ballot is down, the affidavit ballot is down at the Board of Election. They're verifying, is this person a citizen? Is this person registered? Now, for the independent voters, this is where it gets tricky. So their their vote would not count because they were not registered into the party that was having the primary election. So yes, they will be notified from the Board of Election, and it doesn't say in those layman terms like your vote doesn't count in that way, but it says that you were not registered in the party, whatever party that's having the primary election. So and then your vote would not be wouldn't be able to cast your vote.
But what you're saying, Lorraine, raises another question in my mind, and that is, I've heard that during early voting, you can go to any of the sites that are open to cast your ballot. I'm talking about scanned on site, not you didn't get a mail-in or a absentee. You don't have to go to a site in your district. Is that correct? Because I've heard
No, you're assigned. The Board of, unfortunately, we can't vote anywhere we want to vote. The Board of Election assigns us being voters, assigns voters to designated polling sites. Now, the early voting sites are larger. So there's multiple election districts is what they call it. As I've referenced before, those are the little stores under the big mall, right? The Assembly District is the mall, and the election districts are all the stores in the mall. So they would take 4 or 5 election districts and put them together. I feel like the vote tally, I think they tally each election district maybe has 100,000 voters.
Okay.
Or something. It's a high number because it's multiple election districts to vote. So I vote at a school I vote at the Watley School. It's several. When you go there, it's several election districts that are there. They're pulling from all over. People are coming from 110th Street.
That's why that may not be their
that may
actual
not be
voting
their
site
actual
on
voting
election
site because
day.
it's not mine.
Okay.
So
No.
I vote at the JCC
Okay.
Harlem, right? So which is actually like 100 feet from my building. But I am an avid voter. I like to be involved in the process so that I can share my experience and share to people in the community what they should expect when they go. So I always vote first day early voting. I must say I was one who was advocating and lobbying for early voting, so I'm happy to have it. We just need to make it more than 9 days. But anyway, we need to get with the other states, like 30 days. But nonetheless, so those are the differences between the 3 ballots, the affidavit. Now, if somebody says, if a voter is standing there and they say, well, I don't want that. I heard that doesn't count. I don't want that. I want to vote like everybody else on the app, on the scannable ballot, then unfortunately they would have to go to see the judge. They can only vote It's only two options that a voter has.
Also,
is
the Board of Elections information is going to have your assembly and election district, so you know where to go.
And Nikki, everybody is not technologically savvy.
They mail
Some
it
of
to
us
you.
are dinosaurs, and we didn't get it in the mail. What do? I mean, is that
Well,
the only
wait.
way I could get it?
You can call 866-VOTE-NYC, which is 866-868-3692.
Say it again.
That's 866-VOTE-NYC, which the numbers are 866-868-3692.
Well, listen, you say some people are dinosaurs. I got a whole slew of folk who would call me to say, well, what's going on? Tell me what to do. Send me my sample ballot. And so I take care of the dinosaurs.
All right, well, I wanted to make sure because I've been hearing about the vote, NYC vote, NYC vote. I want to know what about those that are dinosaurs.
And
What they going to do?
and the TTY is 711.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So
All
you
right. Well,
do
that's good to know. And I'm glad that you gave us a definition of the. Now, wait a minute here now. I heard you mention about I could go to a judge and get a court order. When is that appropriate? When would you tell me that I have that option of going to a judge? When would you tell me that?
So on the voter side, the voter has 3 attempts to cast their ballot in the polling site, right? The worker can make as many errors as possible, But if you go and we have ranked choice voting right now, and you go and you rank 3 people number 1 and then 1 number 5, it's going to ask you, do you want to cast your ballot as is or take it back? So you want to take it back to correct it, make sure, you see what the error is, like, oh, I was out of line. I did 3 candidates in the number 1 spot and 1 in the number 5 spot, right? And the number 4 spot. So you get the ballot back. That is your first ballot. You get back. You go to the table. They're going to give you another ballot. When you receive that second ballot, the poll workers are supposed to inform the voter that they only get 3 attempts to cast their ballot. So be careful, and this is where ballot marking device comes into play. The poll worker is supposed to mention options. You have 3 chances to cast your vote. If you need assistance, use the ballot marking device to help you, because after that, then you would have to go see a judge in order to vote, because you made an error. Like, it could be, like you mentioned earlier, it could be the font was too small, they couldn't figure out, and again, they bubbled it in the wrong spots, and it was sent back. Now, the scanner does ask you, it does say, like, you overvoted, or you undervoted, or you undercount. So now, do you want to take it or cast the ballot as it is? You always have choices. There's always options. There's always options. So you're taking it back. Now, the third time comes and you give it and you're like, I made a mistake. Now the poll worker says, well, in order for you to vote, you would have to go to see the judge. Or that's one reason, right? Or if your name is not in the book and they offer you an affidavit ballot and you're the voter's like, no, I don't want to vote by affidavit ballot. I heard that doesn't count, doesn't get counted. Then, the only other option is either you vote by absentee ballot or you go before the judge. And the court order, and it's a piece of paper that they give you at the Board of Election, and you take it to the judge, and then they do their investigation over there. And then
a voter goes to and gets the court order from the judge and returns to because they say that this is where they live, this is their polling site, this is their ED, their AD, and they went and got a court order from the judge. Does that court order allow them to vote on a scannable ballot, or they would still have to vote on an affidavit ballot, which is not scannable?
That depends on what the judge the findings. If they are in the book and everything was right, then they would be getting.
Well, the judge wouldn't necessarily know whether they were in the book.
Right, but they would have to get the affidavit.
Like, for instance, I found where someone who voted every year, and for some reason, their name didn't appear in the book, but it was actually in the book, but it was in the wrong they put it by the first name instead of the last name. So when the poll worker looked for Williams, they didn't look for K for Karen Williams. So that person went and got a court order. Now, because that's what she said, I've been voting same place, I haven't moved, etc. And he gave her a court order to vote. When she returns to the polling site, the same polling site that she really is correctly in, would she be given an affidavit ballot, or would she be allowed to vote on a scannable ballot?
Well, her name was in the wrong place. It was still at that polling site for that.
It was, but
that
they
voter
didn't find it. The
would
poll
get-
worker didn't see it.
And unfortunately, that happens with a lot of
Yes.
our Latinos and Asian voters because of the name be out of order, the last name Kim, you know, for the Asian community, is their last name, and that's also a first name, right? So that happens. Unfortunately, that does happen often, but the poll worker should look more than once, like do a thorough look, because
But they didn't.
Yeah.
So now I got a court order. And I know my name should be in that book, but you looked under W and you didn't find it. So now I came back with a court order. What ballot will you give me?
a scannable ballot, because her name was in the book. It was in the.
But you didn't find it. You don't know it's in the book because you're
Right, but
looking at it.
when they come back with the court order, they would have to look again. It doesn't. I don't. It's not that they are coming. So it's not that the voter. When I say the voter, they're just coming back with the court order. The court order says something. They presented their case, and the Board of Election is there with the judge. It's not. They have to prove the case. So the Board of Election is there. The Board of Election is the one who also tells you in the train. I used to be a poll worker trainer. They tell you we have judges that for the challenges. Somebody is there from the Board of Election to verify. The judge that is,
The judge doesn't have somebody from BOE there. I have judges every year for, of course, my district. And there's nobody from BOE there. He's there by himself, sitting there by himself. I get him a desk, I get him a chair, and whatever else he's got, and people go in, and he gives them a court order that says that they are to be allowed to vote. There's no BOE, no Board of Election person
they
there
should,
with
because
him.
the Board of Election also, they tell you where the judges are.
The poll worker told the voter where to go, where the judge was. The voter went to the state office building, in this case, and went to the judge. There was nobody from BOE with the judge there.
Well, there should have been, because the Board of Election tells you where the judges are. I understand as you as the assembly member, got the judge, but the Board of Election tells you where the judges are. If there's a challenge, somebody can challenge. I can
had to
if
get
Nikki
the site
comes,
for the judge, and I got the site for the judge, set it up, got the room, did everything, and BOE was not with the judge.
it's interesting because they verify if the person can vote. Like, I understand the judge's position, right? I understand and respect the bench, but how can, if someone is not, we'll just use a non-citizen for this example. If someone is actually not a citizen and they can't vote and they go to vote and they go before the judge, with the court order, how would the judge come back and give them? There has to be some type of looking through an investigative.
To be perfectly truthful, that did occur in an election, prior election, where people who were not registered to vote in the county or any of the 5 counties, and they got a court order to vote, and it took after the election, when all the candidates are reviewing ballots, etc., is where it was discovered
Lordy.
that this anomaly, if you will, had occurred. So that's why I'm raising that issue, because these are the things that voters, particularly voters in communities of color, are fearful about. And in that particular election, there was justification for that. So that's why I'm raising it, because of my concern at knowing what has happened, what could possibly happen, And what does that mean to the voter who comes back with their court order that says they should be allowed to vote? What am I going to give them? Am I going to give them an
affidavit ballot.
They would get an affidavit ballot. All right. And once it's verified, then it would be counted.
Correct.
Once it's verified that it met the criteria, then it would be counted.
Right, correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to get clear, because voters get very nervous about this.
Yes, and also noted, and in this conversation that we're having, I don't want to alarm voters, all right, and the viewers of ballots not counting, security. That's a whole nother.
But they are counted. They are generally counted as long as they meet the criteria of a registered voter.
Yes.
In the
at that
district.
site, then they will, in that assembly district. Now,
all ballots, whether they're scannable, affidavit, absentee ballot, get counted to certify an election. That's why the election has to be.
Repeat that again, because so many people are fearful.
They really are. Especially about the affidavit. Oh, I don't want to, because I don't want to.
Yes.
I don't want to use that because I heard
that's exactly it. So
I
want you to say that again.
Yes. So all ballots eventually get counted in order to certify that election, which I believe is 30 days after election day. It's 30 days after. So there's a whole process under the election law, when they have to count the ballots for early voting, absentee ballot, the military, and so forth. So all of these are coming through, and we didn't talk about the military, but the military ballots are different also. They say military on them. They're absentee ballot, but they say military. All of those ballots have to come in, as Nicole mentioned, by that deadline. Once they're coming in, they're being counted. So election day, when we're watching on the screen and the ticker is going under the bottom for the precincts reporting, those are all scannable. Those are all of the scannable ballots when they went and they scanned them in and all of that, that's election day reporting. But the mail-ins and the absentee and the military overseas and all of the college students and everybody sending their mail, they have to be counted.
The military ballots distributed, they used to be distributed to whatever assembly district and ED they actually were voting from, they lived in. Is that still done?
I believe so.
So the military,
they have to request them. If they request,
no. What I mean is they used to deliver. When I used to work the poll, and military say was lived in my ED where I was working, and voted by military ballot. The military ballots were delivered to my table. Is that still done?
No.
All right.
Not to my knowledge. So
Okay.
if
that's what I want to know, because that's what it used to be.
Yeah, no, they get, they as in the voter that's in the military, it
goes to the BOE and stays at the BOE.
It stays at the BOE.
Okay, well, see, that's something
they
new.
can be in Baghdad, they can be in Syria, they can be.
Well, they used to deliver them to BOE, and BOE before the end of the night used to deliver them to each assembly district and election district that it belonged in. That's how it used to be.
Yeah, that has changed, and that's one of the main reasons. This is off topic, but that's one of the main reasons why our primary in New York State moved from September to June, is to allow time for all of the military voters.
Well, it wasn't just the military. The lawsuit was actually brought by someone who was residing outside of the country for work, and brought a lawsuit that said that they did not have enough time for their ballot to be mailed back, for them to receive it, mail it back, and be counted. And that's why it changed from September to June. It used to be, it used to be June before it was September. It used to be June years and years and years ago. It used to be June. And then they changed it to September. And then with the lawsuit, is when it went back from September back to June.
Right, and one of them.
See, I've been here long enough to know about this.
I remember September. I remember when it went to June.
But yeah, that's why I said the military is one of the reasons. So yeah, well, thank you for that history.
And then it was September.
So I wanted to make sure that people understood that, why they're voting, and the most important issue is the ranked choice voting, and the two of you have really explained thoroughly. And before we close, because we're going to be coming to a closing, but please explain once more to our viewers about the ranking, and you, the voter, chooses the ranking 1, 2, and 3, not necessarily because candidates may have said this is the way you do it. You determine as the voter. Who is that correct?
Yes, so the voter has up to 5 choices to rank. I mean, right now in the mayoral race, maybe it's like 12 candidates. Whatever the number. And as Nicole mentioned earlier, in that particular race, mayoral, it will say choose up to 5. Now, like in the public advocate's race, there's only 3 candidates, so that header would say choose up to 3. Like, you know,
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3.
And if there was only 2, there's no. You just going to choose one person.
Right. So I just want to say this: that when you're ranking, you're ranking according to your preference. So who's your most favorite? You like their education. You know, you're a small business owner. You like the money. You like the fact that one of the electeds in government level of government, they had put a lot of money into small businesses. You want to support a candidate who is for helping out small businesses. You want a candidate who is about health care. That's how you should be ranking your candidates. You should be, is the key word, how you should be based on policy. However, I want to be clear to the voters and viewers that you should not be ranking someone that you do not like and do not want. Like, that's not, the ranking is your preference. Okay. That's the key. It's your preference. And if out of 5 choices, if you only like 2 candidates, then you only ranking those 2 candidates.
But then wait. Now, if they only rank, if I as a voter, I only rank, I can rank 5. There's 10 people running, whatever, and I only rank 2. And my 2 get knocked out, then am I in the rest of the rounds?
Nope, you are out.
What do you mean by that?
So your ballot is what they call ballot exhaustion. So if your 2 candidates that you ranked are eliminated because they have basically the least amount of votes, that means that your ballot has nowhere to go because there are no more candidates picked on that. And so it's basically cast to the side. And those numbers actually don't count in the factoring of what is the majority, which is 50% plus 1.
So then you're telling me then that really, if it's a lot of candidates in the race,
right,
for whatever position, if there's a lot of candidates in the race, you by law you can rank up to 5, and you actually should then rank up to 5.
I mean, you should.
Ideally, the reason I say that is because you've exhausted your ballot if you only rank 1 and 2.
Prematurely, if those candidates are eliminated
in an earlier round. If they go 8 rounds, for instance, and my first choice, second choice gets knocked out in one of the earlier rounds, then I'm not in any of the other rounds subsequent to that then.
Exactly. And what people need to keep in mind is that ranked choice voting, the goal of it is to come to what they call a consensus candidate. So while they may not have been your first or second or even your third choice, it's something that a majority of the voters in that election could live with, right? And so that's how people have to kind of look at this. So now if you're only ranking, 2 and they're eliminated, that means that the person that's elected is not necessarily the consensus candidate of everyone who participated in the election.
Your ballot was exhausted.
It was
exhausted. It went 7 rounds,
right?
And you only voted for 2 people,
right? And those
2 candidates,
yes,
and they got eliminated,
and they were eliminated.
Then in round 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, I'm not. Right. I don't have a ballot.
You don't have a say, right?
Say that again so that people understand. I want my viewers to understand that.
Yes, no, the purpose of ranked choice voting and encouraging people to rank, which is why we work so hard to educate people about it, is because we want people's ballot to stay in the race at least through the 5. Like if there's 8 candidates it could still be a possibility if you didn't pick the winner that your ballot could be exhausted, but at least you went 5 rounds instead of being out of it in 2 rounds. Now, with that said, you know, I also tell people, do not rank someone that you do not want to win. And I'm going to repeat that. Do not rank anyone who you don't want to win the race.
Viewers, did you hear that, viewers?
If you don't want that person to win, don't even rank them number 5. Because some people are like, oh, I'll rank them. Don't do it. Do not rank them at all. That's not what we're saying. But we are saying, look as best you can at these candidates so that your ballot is not prematurely exhausted. And know this, your ballot only moves when the person that you voted for is eliminated. So let's say, for example, you rank 2 people and the person that you ranked as your first choice stays in the race the whole time and is the winner. Your ballot never went to the second person because your candidate stayed in that race. Your first choice is the winner. So your ballot only moves to the vote based on the elimination process. So if your candidate stays in, you're good to go. You're lucky. But just in case, we tell people, you know, try to rank. I say at least 3 people to try to rank. And then the other thing I like to talk about with ranked choice voting is that I feel like it gives us a chance to vote for those candidates who maybe in the polls or, you know, in the circles, they may not have a chance, right? If you're using ranked choice voting, you can rank that underdog candidate as your first choice. And then if you say, okay, I'll give, you know, more established candidates my second and third, but you at least give that underdog a fighting chance in the first round. And so if they get eliminated, then your ballot, your vote will move to your second, third, fourth, and fifth choices, but you won't feel guilty or feel like it's, because some people feel like it's a wasted vote if they vote for somebody, oh, they don't have a chance, I'm not voting for them.
Right.
And ranked
it's
choice,
not splitting the vote.
Right, it's not splitting the vote, it's just giving that person, you saying, listen, I'll rank you my first choice, and if you don't make it through, you know, my vote will eventually move to other candidates on the list. So that's also, I think, an important element of RCV
Well, that is
that
very
people can
important to
take
know,
advantage
because
of.
as an elected, talking to voters, I often tell them, you know, to rank 5 in the case where there's, you know, more than 5 candidates. I tell them to rank 5, but to choose wisely the candidate that they like, first choice candidate, and they cannot be the same candidate. In other words, whoever you voted for,
one
you can't put them as number 2 or number 3 or number 5.
That's right.
I tell them that, but I tell them utilize, and I'm sorry, I don't tell them worry about the underdog. I tell them worry about who you think best represents you and your community.
But you know, people get caught up though in the polls and in the conversation about who's leading, who has the money, who has this, who has the establishment, who has the support. And so when they get caught up in that, they may like a person, they may like another candidate that doesn't have that institutional support, who may not have a lot of money. And so they'll say, you know what, I'll just go, or they may not vote at all and say, oh, that person's probably going to win anyway, I'm not going to bother. Instead of saying, you know what, they may not have a lot of money, they may not have a lot of institutional support, but you know, I like this person, so I'm going to rank them and just, you know, give them a chance, so to speak. So it's, you know, it's tricky. It's tricky. But the average voter, they see what people say about the polls and, you know, who's got endorsements.
The best candidate that you like first,
That's right.
second, third, regardless of whether they are the most popular one, it's who is the best representative for your district or your city or your borough, whatever the seat we're talking about. Who is best that's going to represent the needs of your community?
That's right.
Now that's what you do. You. It's very important. You listen to your candidates. We all get a lot of mail from all the candidates. You know.
Well, we don't all get a lot of mail.
Not all of
so
us.
that's an interesting point that you raised. So it's funny. By the time, my father passed in 2022, he was a super prime voter. And a super prime voter is someone who has voted in every election in the last 7 elections. And so he would get all of this campaign mail. And what people don't understand is that the reason why folks send you a lot of campaign mail is because they know you are going to vote.
Yeah.
So the people who they know that are going to the poll site, if you went to the last 7 elections, 9 times out of 10, you're going to go to this one coming up. And so they want to target you with their information because they know that you are going to vote.
Right.
Good point.
So
Good point.
So everybody's not getting
Good point,
it.
because I get so much mail sometimes.
Of course you do, right.
Yeah. So, but
Right.
I'm glad you raised that issue.
So so if you're getting a lot of mail, be thankful. That means you're a voter. You're someone who votes regularly, and that people want to get their message to you, because there's also people that say, I don't hear anything. I didn't know the election was happening. I didn't get any information at all. Right? And so it's like, and honestly, that's the premise behind Educated Voter. It was to make sure that everybody should be being targeted. Everyone should be sought after. Everyone should be getting information and being engaged around electing people who are going to represent them. But listen, candidates don't have enough people, time, or resources. And so you understand why they're going to target a voter first. But you want to make sure, my goal is to make sure that everyone is participating so that then everyone is engaged.
Right, and it's
All right, so now
and
before
all of
we-
those mailers cost money.
That's right.
They do.
That's right.
And it costs money depending on how many colors they have and how many pictures they have. So again, would you give, before we close out, would you tell our viewers when the primary is? When is the general election? When does early voting start? When can they go and either call the number, and I'd like you to repeat the number, or go online and tell us, those of us that are technologically savvy,
Yes.
that to go online to request either a absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot. So just would you go over that one last time so that our viewers know for sure?
So we're going to take it from the top. Early voting is going to start on June 14th and run through June 22nd. So that's Saturday, June 14th to Sunday, June 22nd, and primary day.
So it's going on now?
Yes. No, June.
Oh, June, okay.
Yes. There's a special election happening now, but that's
Yes.
a different conversation. But June 14th to June 22nd, early voting. And then the primary is taking place on June 24th, Tuesday. So again, the last day to vote, the day that mail-in, ballots need to be postmarked. So you get them in the mail, the last day to drop them off at a poll site if you have a mail-in vote, last day to drop them off in person at your county board of elections office, as well as any absentee ballots, the same thing for mail-in and absentee. Those are the deadlines. What other deadlines did you want me to hit? Oh, and vote.nyc is the website where you can get all this information. Poll site, early voting locations, election districts, assembly districts, judicial districts, viewing sample ballots, checking your voter registration so you know where to vote in advance.
Glad you brought that up. What if I go online or I call, because I want you to give the phone number, and it says, I thought I was registered as a Democrat
Yes.
or whatever, and I go online and it says I'm not registered.
At all.
No, I'm registered, but I'm not registered in a party. What does that mean, and can that be corrected?
So, the deadline for that passed. That was Valentine's Day, to change your party. So they can register. So the last day to register is also the first day of early voting, which now we're calling sunset, that last day, that you can register to vote in this primary. Now, if somebody was not,
And
they
that's
want to
June
switch day,
14th.
that's Saturday, June 14th. Now, if a voter wants to change their party for this election, they can't. They missed the
too late.
deadline. The deadline was February 14th, Valentine's Day.
Before
But
it used
new
to be,
voters.
be It used to be that if you
It was
wanted
a
to
year.
change your party, you're registered, but you wanted to change your party, it used to have to be done a year in advance.
That's right.
Is that still the case?
No,
No.
it changed. What year? We're in 2025. It changed. The law changed
years ago.
2023, I think. I think it was 2022. I think it
before.
was on
I mean,
2022.
well,
you
now
can-
it's
if
Valentine's.
you're already
now it's
registered.
Valentine. Right. If you want to change your party,
Yes, you want to change
it
your
has
party.
to be done that same year, but on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Is a deadline. So
If
Which
you're
is
already
February
registered.
14th.
if you're already registered and you just
Right.
want to change your party, you can change your so the last day you can register to vote is on register to vote on Saturday, June 14th.
That's if you've never been
If
registered
you've never
before.
been registered. If you're changing your address, you can register and just on the form and it just asks what are you changing and you're changing your address.
Or your name.
Or your name. But the party
And
affiliation,
what's the deadline date for that?
that's Saturday, June 14th.
All right. Go ahead.
I would say the Friday the 13th only because the polling sites, I mean, the Board of
The
Elections
election's
are not,
working.
they're not
They're working the
open.
polls.
Right, they're working the polls. So,
Don't press your luck with June 14th. That
Yeah.
is the absolute deadline. They're going to be working the polls. Like, just let's be
Yeah.
reasonable. They're human beings. We say the Board of Elections, but they are people. They're going to be trying to get that early voting stuff together. Try to do it earlier. Try to do it earlier.
right, and yeah, so again, right. So that would be, I would say, encourage people to do it, as Nicole just mentioned, the day before. Let that Friday, whatever that Friday date is, to be the last day for you to register.
And you could also do it.
So
the
you can
DMV.
And you
if
can
you-
now do it online.
If you've
you
never
have,
been registered before, you can register by the 14th.
correct.
But now, if you're registered, you've been registered, and you want to change your party affiliation, you have to do that by February 14th.
That was right, so the deadline already passed.
Okay. So that you, all right.
And
so
16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register. So if you have some college students that are
High school.
high school students between the age of 16, at the age of 16 or 17, they can pre-register to vote, and then on their 18th birthday it goes in effect. And you were alluding to online. You can register to vote online if you have a New York State driver's license or non-driver's license ID.
all right. Now you also, this is. I just want to get clarification on this. Before you said that when they check the ballot, say you did fill out an affidavit ballot, they check the ballot to make sure that you're registered in the party in which the primary is being held, that you are indeed a resident of that assembly district, and then the last thing is that you're a citizen. Now, those are three things that they check with the affidavit ballot. However, if you register with just having a driver's license, does that qualify you with all three answers to all three of those questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Because at the motor vehicles, you're showing your points to prove citizenship, address verification, and what is the local law? Outside the city, they have it separate. So I don't want to get all into the weeds, but for the Department of Motor Vehicles, you have to present, you have to present your
Documentation.
points, your verification, your birth certificate, social security, stuff to prove that you can get a driver's license, right? We have the green driver's license that's outside the city. But those are not eligible voters either.
So now, if I'm not a citizen, I can still get a driver's license.
You have to have a social security number, don't you, to have that driver's
But
license?
you have
get
to social to vote.
You
Yeah,
say
so-
what?
You're
I
a
didn't
citizen.
say that.
So
be a
you're
citizen
in
in
you
order
were
to
in
vote.
the assembly, so you know the green law, which the naturalized citizens and the green card.
Well, naturalized as a citizen. So,
Right,
So the
that's
green
citizen.
card. So the green card. Well, you can elaborate further on that. The difference between that, because that's not in the city. That's outside the city, in the state. As we know, we have 62 counties. New York is a huge state. We border 5 states in one country. People don't think that; they just see New York City. But outside the city, they have special driver's license.
license.
Right, and that was like the green law or something like that. but that's not in the city, and that's not for. Those are for those who are non-citizens, but they fall under a special category to get the driver's license so that they can get to work or whatever they have to be. But they're not eligible to vote. Those are not eligible voters. So you have to be a citizen to be an eligible voter, right? So you have to check all those boxes. So when you go online to vote, to register to vote online in New York, you have to have a driver's license or a non-driver's license, a New York State driver's license or a non-driver's license ID. So that also changes the time now at the Board of Election. That's why we're encouraging people to register to vote on that Friday when the Board of Election is still open, rather than waiting on that Saturday, because before the law passed, the Board of Election would be open to 11:59 p.m. I've come plenty of times in a cab with a stack of voter registrations and dropping them off, but everybody's encouraged. Well, the Board of Election is encouraging online voter registration.
So I want to thank both of you, Farain and Nikki, Farain Griffith and Nicole Yearwood, for coming on and explaining to us ranked choice voting. I think it was very important that you do so, because the two of you have done this. So you know the ins and outs and the intricacies and the importance. And the fact that particularly in communities of color, they have lost votes because of misunderstanding. Not because they didn't want to vote, but because of misunderstanding ranked choice voting and how it operates. So I want to thank the both of you for coming on and being willing to take the time to explain to our viewers the importance of ranked choice voting and how to utilize it to the best, and to give the deadlines, because that's also very important for people to understand what their deadlines are for changing party, for changing their dress, for registering people to vote, period, and about the early voting, because everybody hears about this and then they're not quite sure, what does that mean? So I'm so grateful to the both of you for being willing to take your time to come and tell our viewers exactly how to utilize it. And of course, I want to definitely thank Manhattan Neighborhood Network and the great staff here for agreeing to having us to have this important issue that we are discussing today. And I want to thank NYC for Youth, igniting a brighter future, because the youth is not just our future, they're our today.